Under the Rug podcast, second episode and everything. So just want to welcome everybody back and everything like that. Said me and Korbin here. Got our good friend up, the guy that actually trained me to do home inspections, Shawn of Hemlock Home Inspections, man. We want to welcome you up and everything like that. It's been going on 4 years now.
Been a little while, man. Huh? Thank you so much for having me on.
Man,
we appreciate it.
Man, we appreciate you for coming up, man. You're like a brother, a mentor, a friend, uncle. You just kind of all of that to me and everything like that. And kind of the bond and everything that we've kind of able to been built over the past few years. So
I agree, man. Blessed that we were able to meet. Yep. And yeah, got such a great relationship. From the get, too. It didn't take, a second?
It just took a second, man. Instantly since we met. So how long have you kind of been into home inspections and everything like that?
Well, it's been over 15 years now. Jeez, I think I'm going into my 16th or 17th year already. Yes, and businesses, it's just been great and steady over this time. You know, it took a little while to get going, but now that I'm established and people know who I am and what I'm about, then it keeps me nice and busy.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
You're in Manistee, correct?
Yeah, that's where I reside.
So 2 hours north of Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
Saying that, it's crazy. I had to travel 2 hours up north just to get some type of training. Nobody, when I first started home inspections, when we talked on the phone, was like, man, nobody in Grand Rapids would train me. They kind of look at me as competition. Yeah. At that time, I didn't get it. Years now down the road, it's like, oh, I get why they didn't want to train me.
Yeah, man. They don't want you taking food off their plate.
No. Agreed.
Lucky for me, you're kind of out of my competition zones. Otherwise, I'd be working for you by now.
Yes, sir. You received an award not too long ago, like the Inspector of Manistee or something like that, right?
Yeah, it was a Reader's Choice competition, I guess you would call it. It ran through October for the best of our little town of Manistee. And I was fortunate that enough people voted for me to be the home inspector of choice for our little town up there. So
that's what's up there, man.
I got a little award over that. It was kind of nice, you know. I was really hoping I wasn't going to take second anyway, man.
So saying that, man, I think something that we all somewhat have in common. Me and Korbin met shortly after you and I met. And saying that, so something at least I wanted to discuss on our second episode of Under the Rug podcast was more so maybe like the importance of relationship building, having that mentor, building that team, and the overall importance of not burning bridges. You know what I'm saying? Even when you bump heads or have disagreements, still being able, to handle business and continue having that love between us and everything like that. So
right, man. And it's all about who you got around you too. You got good people, good minds that all think alike. You don't have to agree on absolutely everything, but and it just helps when everybody's got the same common goal. That's to move things along.
Yes.
And that's very helpful to have that kind of team.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So kind of saying that, Shawn, some things that me and Korbin typically start off at the start of the show, we kind of talk about the goals, the different things that we wanted for ourselves last episode, going into this episode. Been over a little bit over a month now and being able to succeed and act on those goals and different things like that. So Korbin, you kind of mind sharing your previous goals that you had?
Yeah, mine last we spoke on the podcast were I had said that I was going to try to do a little bit of reaching out, a little cold calling or a little cold emailing with some different people. And in hindsight, doing that in December wasn't the best idea. I did do it. I did go through and I did reach out to a few people. I didn't get many responses, and that's because I think. We also discussed this in the last podcast. People kind of shut down. Business owners, entrepreneurs especially, a lot of them that have been in the business for a while, they kind of shut down in that month of December. It can be hard not to, to do the same because everybody else does. But it wasn't too discouraging or anything. Obviously I was kind of quick to realize that was not, an ideal situation, but it doesn't really matter. It's more about the act of doing it anyways. And honestly, sometimes not getting a response or not getting exactly what you want is better in a weird way. It just kind of gets that fear of doing it out of the way, and then just kind of get the fear of rejection or no response or whatever sort of thing. And coming into January, business has really picked up. Aside from that, anyway, so it hasn't been. It was a good practice. We'll hit it again, but we'll probably wait until. It seems like certain times a year people are just spending money. It doesn't really matter what that's on, whether it's houses or technology or whatever. There's just always seems to be kind of ebbs and flows with people and how they spend their money different times a year, different seasons, and winter's not one of them. People aren't really spending money in the winter, so and myself very much the same. So goals, mission kind of accomplished. Went out and did it. We'll do it again, but didn't exactly get the results that I maybe thought I would, but looking back, I can see why. And our goals, your goal was kind of a goal that we worked on ever since we hung up the podcast last month, which was just kind of planning our businesses for this year, which we've done, right? Check that off the list pretty much. I think we had a great couple of probably 3 or 4 weeks. We've been, meeting regularly every week. We've been talking about what we're gonna do this year, and I got a pretty good feeling about it. So
yes, sir.
I'd say we did a pretty good job on those goals for the first time around, for sure.
Agreed. Agreed on that, man. Something that we do, Shawn, we typically have an overall production meeting once a week. We typically kind of come brainstorm, give our own selves tasks, kind of challenge ourselves and everything like that. Come back the next week, give updates, and continue coming back to that drawing board, especially during this season when things typically slow down for inspectors and different things like that. Do you have any specific goals for yourself, things that you've been trying to work on in regards to the business, or any type of personal goals you'd like to share?
Actually, at this point in my career, Brian, I think a lot of my business goals are pretty constant right now, and for me at this point in my career, it's a lot of it's just about maintaining the business that I have.
Yes, sir.
I'm willing to continue to grow a little bit, but at this point, aside from one of my kids wanting to get into doing home inspections or something, I'm not really needing to push that hard. I've got a good reputation. A lot of people know me. All the realtors that call me. 80% of my business comes from people that I've already worked for or worked with. Yeah. So a lot of my goals are more personal, and community minded going into this year.
Yes,
I've got a lot of things that I want to get accomplished, with just trying to give back.
Yes,
more community giving, more, making people aware of other people and just trying to bring people together for the greater good of humanity. I mean, that's really my goal for this year, man.
That's great.
Keep that going.
That's really good.
Yeah.
You already somewhat do that to a certain extent. He's like the president over the Elks Club in Manistee, right?
Yeah. I'm called the Exalted Ruler.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No way.
Oh, yeah. All the old timers call me the exhausted rooster, is what they say.
It sounds like a live action role play event.
We get to wear jewels. I'll tell you, it's pretty awesome.
Eat turkey legs.
The meeting room that they have looks like a government hall or something like that. I remember you had when it was your Christmas parade. Me and Mopad came over for you and Julie, and they brought us to their meeting room, and it was like, man, I feel like I'm a governor or something in here.
King in there,
it's a pretty spectacular room.
That's cool.
And that whole organization, it's all about, there's 4 things for a fraternal organization like the Elks that they're all about. It's brotherly love, charity, justice, and fidelity. I mean, these are all things that people that, if they really care about other people and they want to be involved in their community, it's a good way to do that. And it's such a big national club that you have resources. You've got ways to give back and do things for the community, which is really nice. So
that's cool.
Yeah, that's kind of where, like I said, that's where I'm kind of putting my focus at this year, is to help push that initiative and keep that place going and try to help some people out, whether they're veterans or kids, whoever.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So when it comes to struggles, because that's going to be something that we kind of touch upon, like I said, every episode of Under the Rug podcast, Like I said, the reason, or one of the main reasons we kind of started this, something once again that we all have in common, we're all entrepreneurs. We all have to wake up day by day and kind of run our own businesses. These entities continue coming with ideas, like you said, to stay on top. And for us, like you said, to continue to grow in different things like that. So what may be some of the struggles you think you may deal with, whether, like I said, personally or when it comes to and relates to the business as an inspector?
Well, right now is a great time of the year to bring that up because it's winter and everybody's gone. A lot of people leave town. They take their houses off of the market. Right now we're faced, like I said earlier, up in my county, in Manistee County, currently there's only 35 houses for sale.
Yes, sir.
That's crazy.
There's got to be 75 to 100 realtors. Yeah. Like, there's not even enough business there to keep the realtors going, And I know in Muskegon County, there was only 108, and I know there's more than 108 realtors there.
Yes, sir.
And and it's a lot bigger market, so there's just not that much for sale. People, they forego inspections. Yeah. Those are all things that we struggle with, especially this time of the year. Other times of the year, it's well, for me, I don't. You work in a much more metropolitan type of a market.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I find myself out in the middle of fucking nowhere on some 2-track, following my Ford Fusion GPS into the middle of nothing to a point I got stuck. I had no choice. I had to hit this mud puddle over the summer.
Yes, sir.
I was buried. And it was all just based on just logistics. I was literally less than a quarter of a mile away from this place. And when I finally got stuck, but to get out and to find my way back out, it was, man, I would have needed a trail of breadcrumbs like Hansel and Gretel, man. There's no way I could get out of there. So I go in and do the home inspection. Luckily, that was the only one I had that day. And called a tow truck. Took them 3 hours to find us. No way. So I ended up walking down this trail, listening for a honk.
No way.
And talking to the guy on the phone saying, yeah, you're getting closer. I mean,
oh my gosh.
So when you get out in these areas out in the middle of nowhere, it's hard, man. Wow. It's tough. That's tough.
That is tough. That's incredible. We don't really deal with.
You don't realize how much. I mean, for you guys, it's traffic, man. You're like sitting in traffic. That takes forever.
Yeah, I'd take that over getting stuck personally.
Oh, dude.
Yeah. That's the worst.
It was a mess. It's just a mess. Worst.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a couple of things. What else is there that I can think of off the top of my head? I mean, mostly it's some clients or sellers that don't want to leave the house.
The sellers can be a struggle sometimes.
They want to tell me
know the ropes they put us through for them.
Yeah, man. They want to tell me how, that worked yesterday, or I never used that, or I'll find something that's just completely nowhere near code. It's a safety hazard, and then they get pissed when I find that, because they'll try to follow me around and see what it is that I'm looking at in their house, and it's like, the more they do that,
that's bad coaching, in my opinion, on the part of the seller's realtor. I mean, they should tell them to get out of there. There's nothing that they shouldn't be communicating with you at all. They shouldn't be there. It's just, they could say things that they don't want to say that could make their way back into other parties, and it's just such a liability. It's annoying for you to have somebody, be over your shoulder, and it's just not a good situation. You don't want, as a realtor on either side, you really don't want anybody there during the inspection. I don't think, most likely, unless it's you, the realtor, and you want to be there, or you offer the opportunity for clients to show up at the end of the inspection, kind of once you've already done the job, and that's on purpose as well, because if you have people following you around all the time while you're doing inspection, bless their heart, you can understand why they want to, but you're in the zone, you're kind of got a routine, and that can be broken so easily, and everyone's doing themselves a disservice by being there and distracting the whole process, because there could be things that are missed, and then they're going to blame you, or whatever else.
Well, one of my favorite things when a buyer is there, the buyer will be there. I might get there a couple minutes after them.
Yeah.
We walk in, we get everything set up, and they want to know if I've been in the attic. So, dude,
we just got here.
I walked in behind you, remember? Like, we just got here, man. Like, I've not left your site, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
You want to come with? Yeah.
some of them do. That's the cream. They'll follow me up on roofs. They'll follow me up
and
in
that's
attics.
a liability issue on their end.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, man, I don't recommend what you're doing right now, you know?
I think that's why you're paying me to climb on the roof.
Yeah. Above all, my favorite is, I'll climb up into an attic. I'm wandering around, doing my thing up there, and I'm totally ready to come out, especially when it's summertime.
Yes, sir.
You know, it's 80 degrees in here. It's 110 or more up there, and then they want to poke their head and just kind of do this, and I'm wanting to and then they want to talk. And I'm trapped in there, right? And it's like
you can barely breathe because you get a heat stroke as it is.
And I'm way too nice, you know. So here I am. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, yeah, no, you got good ventilation up here. Yeah, it's really good. You know, it could be a little better insulated. It's like
it's definitely warm.
Yeah, and then I come out and literally dripping with sweat, and they're like, "What? It looks like it was hot up there." It's like, no shit. Yeah,
I think it was.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, yeah, that's crazy.
As it snows right now, I tell him, because with Marcus, he was like, man, B, it's really cold out here when we doing these inspections. And I'm like, well, kind of deal with that now. It's better off because you'll rather be cold than be able to go outside and warm up. Every house has a furnace, right? They all have a heating source. However, when you do a house in the summertime, you go inside a house, especially an older house without air conditioner, then you got to get in the attic that's 110 degrees.
Yeah.
You kind of hot all over the place. There ain't nowhere to cool down for.
Yeah, so. And you're all sweaty, and if you got to get into a crawl space, well, now you're filthy.
And more houses have a furnace than do an air conditioner, so a lot of times you get out of that hot attic and come down and they don't have any air. You're really not cooling off. You're just not as scorching hot as you were 5 minutes
Well, you do
ago.
notice the 20-degree temperature difference, but then you're right back to sweating again. You know.
Yeah.
Well, and what you said too, like, most houses have furnaces, but I find myself, again, because I end up doing a lot of stuff on lakes and inland lakes, a lot of vacation properties. It's really the bulk of my business.
Yeah.
So I have to make sure I've got at least 5 extra jackets and a blanket and all this stuff, because sometimes you get to these houses and they've been winterized.
Yeah.
So the heat's off, you got no water, you got nothing. Yeah. So then, like, you're opening up an oven and turning that up, just to try to, just for a minute, just so you can keep going. And I find too that houses that are, especially in winter, if it's 20 degrees outside, inside that locked up house with no heat, it's another 5 to 10 degrees cooler in the house. So you really got to bundle up, and it irritates me. I'd rather almost come back and just, like...
turn everything on, come back when it's a little warm.
People don't get that. They're like, well, can't you just look at it? Well, I can't. How much of your bathroom am I going to be able to tell you about without any running water?
That's very true. Most of the important stuff does depend on the function of the water.
I mean, you might have a furnace. What if you got a loose duct and it ain't getting no heat in some upstairs room? Then, how am I going to know that?
Hang out for 5 hours.
I guess whose fault it is as soon as they discovered that stuff, and they're like, well, you didn't see this, you didn't see that. It's like, no water, no heat, bud. What do you want?
That's very true. That's very true.
Korbin, you might kind of sharing some of your kind of struggles, maybe you kind of been dealing with.
Some of my struggles, we haven't really talked much, but I'm sure Brian's told you a little about what I do. I do a lot of marketing, branding stuff, internet stuff. I build a lot of websites, that sort of thing. I would say what I've been dealing with most, and just hearing you guys kind of talk about it earlier is kind of making me think about it. I have definitely people that I've connected with that do the same thing that I do. I've worked for people who, kind of commission or build out websites and things like that, and worked under teams and stuff, but I wouldn't say that I really have a similar relationship with anybody in the same sense that you guys necessarily have. It's kind of a hard thing to find. I mean, we are all competition, so either you work for somebody or you're kind of competing with them. And with the web space, nowhere's really off limits. It's not really about locality. That can be beneficial in some sense, but really, I can work with anybody, whether it's here, domestically or overseas or whatever. So everybody can be a competitor in that sense. So. that can kind of be a struggle sometimes. I don't always have a reliable place for the information that I might need or the questions I might have to ask. I kind of have to just figure all this stuff out on my own. Like I said, I've worked for some companies who do things. I find, that generally what I learned from those places, at least in my opinion, is honestly what not to do. That's usually what I take away from a lot of, experiences that I've had, and usually end up leaving those places for reasons like that. Whether or not that's something that, is just a me thing or what, I don't know. But that's just usually what I end up taking away from things like that. So being mostly on my own now, I work with a few other people on things, but that can be a struggle for me because there's just there's no frame of reference for me sometimes. So as I've kind of, done more business and been able to figure out what kind of pitfalls I run into, what sort of things take more time. It's a really dynamic business. It's really hard. Like, for instance, right now I've got a realtor actually that I'm working with, and those can be really complicated sites. I mean, especially they were 5 or 10 years ago when realtors were really competitive on their websites. They're not so much now, and the reason why is because if people are going online to search for homes and look for information and stuff, most of what they're doing when they Google, most of what's coming up is Zillow and Trulia and all those big names that have paid, basically to have those positions on the search results and things. People are searching for houses. Even as a realtor, putting the realtor hat on, it can be the most frustrating thing in the world. You give your clients a customized search through the MLS service that we exclusively use as realtors, and you give it to them based on their criteria, and then they'll send you links like, what about this house? And it's a Zillow link, and you're going, why are you doing this to me? This is out, it's outside the criteria. So, but anyway, those websites have made things difficult for those realtor websites because, it's made it hard for them to compete. So, but those websites can be very, very difficult to piece together because there's so many different there's so many things to consider. Some realtors want to have all that listing data that from the MLS, want to have that on their website. That's a lot to do because it has to come from the MLS service. They have to pay another company that actually takes all that data and then puts it in a way that can be fed to their website. That's even in and of itself a difficult thing to explain to a realtor because they think, well, I already pay my fees. What do I have to pay an extra? What am I paying more for? And so, we kind of got to go down that road. Well, it's not. Yeah, you pay for your MLS, but this company's got to say, well, why can't you do that? I was like, if I could do that, I'd be that company and I'd be charging you that money to do that, and then pay some other kid to do it. Right. So there's just so many different dynamics and variables and things with websites and stuff like that. That is the hardest part because I'm good at working with people. I'm good at explaining things to people. That's not really an issue, but it takes a ton of time, and it's something that I keep thinking maybe I need somebody to actually do that for me so that I can kind of disconnect from it, because I find that I usually kind of have my heart in that sort of thing a little too much. So I always used to hear this in sales when I worked in like retail or wireless sales. I always used to hear people say, don't sell with your own wallet. Meaning if, you see somebody come in, you can't really assume what that person has. You don't want to sell out of your wallet, you want to sell based on what that person actually needs. You want to qualify that person for what they need, not based on what you're assuming they have in their wallet, right? Yes, and so that can just be a difficult thing to do for me personally, because I guess as being maybe an empathetic person or whatever, I'm always kind of looking to save people a buck where I can, but that doesn't exactly work as a business owner. You don't necessarily want to do that. No. I also don't want to sell people things they don't need, but that's a tough balance sometimes. So with all those different variables, all the different possibilities, and having to be the person that's both putting all that together and essentially doing the sales part of it, which I don't even really like to call it sales because it's more of a qualifying sort of a thing, but it is sales. It's hard to wear all those hats, so I kind of don't know sometimes whether I need to alleviate myself from that and have somebody else do that. If I'm going to have somebody else do that, I feel like I'm going to have to charge twice as much because that person's obviously going to have to get paid too. Everybody's got to get paid. So that's my struggle. That's something I hope to kind of work on figuring out this year. If that's something I'm going to continue to do, if I'm going to do that all myself, or what kind of roles I could, give other people that would integrate with that sort of a thing. And everywhere that I do look, other companies that do this and other people that do it all seem to do it differently. So it doesn't really help either. I can't really look anywhere and say, oh, they're all doing it this way, because none of them really are. It seems like
cookie cutter.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be. It doesn't really seem to be. Some things are definitely consistent, but not a lot of people's processes in this business seem to be the same, which can just make it difficult, and it can make it difficult if people shop around. You know, people shop around in different inspection companies. You kind of hope they find like a window and similar services and things they can actually kind of compare, you know, and say, okay, well, you know, but it does seem like with like the website industry, you know, you could have somebody quote you $10,000 for the same thing somebody quote you $4,000 for, and then as somebody who doesn't know in the first place what exactly you're after, what the hell do you do with that? You know, if you had somebody quote you the same house and inspection was $200 or $800, you go, what the hell? Like what's going on here? How could it be so different? You know, and so you know none of the price differences are really quite that big in a lot of things, and so that can just be a tricky thing. It's like we're all making it harder on each other in this business sometimes.
Some of it's perception. You know, I had a customer, well, a potential customer one time would call me up. And this is when my, you know, my prices were just lower than they are now. You know, I'm still doing the same report. I haven't changed anything. I've just raised my rates, right? Sure. So, talking to this lady, and she had a small house, and at that time I had two different price points, and it was only going to be a $300 inspection for her. And I'm thinking, got this, nailed it. She's like, how long have you been doing this? And I'm like, 10 years. She's like, well, you must not be that good or something. Like, why are you only charging $300? And I was like, well, I thought that I was providing a good value and a great service for a fair price. Yeah, and she's like, well, I'm going to go find me somebody else that's going to charge more, because like for her, in her mind, paying an extra $100 or $200 would have had her thinking she's going to get some other kind of exceptional report, which it just wasn't going to be the case. Sure, I know that. But
that is interesting.
She helped me think about raising my rates. I mean, thank you to her.
Yeah, right.
So now I'm the best. I charge the most.
Had my buddy call her back from a different number. We got it anyway. So, that'll make you think, won't it? That's a strange. I can understand that perspective. I really can in some cases, but I don't know. That's a tricky one. I don't know if I would just assume that would be the case. That's a fair rate at that's a good price, but
that's kind of what I used to charge at the beginning, which was $300, and I had to find small ways to try to add more value. Our reports do look different, like the walkthroughs we conduct and different things like that now, and then especially bringing Marcus on and trying to grow the business, you got to charge more, because you got to make you got to pay yourself, you got to pay them. You may have, you got to pay taxes. You may have some additional fees,
gas
and stuff
in the
like
tank.
that.
You got everything, man.
Mm-hmm. Technology fees, all
that.
Yeah.
So after you kind of think about those things, maybe that's kind of where she kind of thought, like, oh, this guy may not be a big company. I'm like, oh, I kind of want to call it a big company, but like you said, you was kind of doing her a favor. I'm a 900 square foot house for $300. So
yeah. Man, I was just being fair, you know.
Yeah.
So
wow.
So now it's like my base price is $400. Like, it's where we start. You want anything else? It's gonna be more. Like,
send her a letter every year. Thanks again. That's incredible.
How long do you think it took, Shawn, for, like I said, in regards to that incident? The reason I asked is because I feel like each year we kind of steadily continue raising our price. Now, like I said, not over too much to where, like you said, you're paying $1,000 for an inspection, but to stay competitive, however, not over or underpricing yourself as an inspector. How do you think you kind of deal with that, or kind of balance that overall?
A lot of it for me, when it comes to pricing, oftentimes the agents that I work with, they're like, because they know me, and it's weird, man. Like I'll be talking to a customer, and they're like, yeah, well, my realtor Eric said this will be the best $400 I'll ever spend.
It's already done the work for you.
So they've done the work for me, and I want to I want to keep my prices high, in order to maximize everything that I can get out of it. But for me, it's a lot of it's in my heart. Like, it ain't all about the money. Do I want to make good money? I just want to live comfortably, which I do pretty well. And every now and then, part of the reason that I charge these other people so much, they want to pay it. But if I find somebody that's young, or that I can see needs some help, then I'll pro bono one once in a while. Yeah, it helps me. It helps them. Yeah. Everybody comes out ahead for stuff like that. So
and you can't even hope to do stuff like that if you don't charge a fair rate to everyone and enough to get you, to get you sitting comfortably. Then you can't afford to even do those sorts of things. So it's all about a perfect balance,
Yeah.
Otherwise, you charge too low, and then you're trying to give breaks, and you're not making any damn money.
Well, and those are the people. The funny thing about that is that those are the people that don't ask for a deal.
Yeah.
So once it asks for a deal, they're buying that over there on the lake, and they're it's already $1 million house, and then they're gonna bitch because I'm charging them $400. Yeah, it's like, come on, man. I mean, I should be charging you $900. Like.
Yeah. Oh, this is your third house? Let me see what my third house rate is.
Oh, you only have one in this state? Oh, well, that's even more now.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I remember I had this realtor call me, and she tried to tell me the price, how much my inspections cost, and I'm like, that's not how this business goes. I don't know who you typically, have inspect your properties, but basically it was a client.
So you charge more or charge less?
Charge less because the client was buying already somewhat of a lower, I would guess, in home. They couldn't really afford it. I'm not the guy to say, well, you probably shouldn't be buying this house. I'm not. Like I said, I'm not that guy, right? Yeah. So pointing that out, I'm like, well, unfortunately, man, we can't do business together because my prices are my prices. So, but kind of going back to what you said, trying to make it work for everybody and everything like that. You do got your few cases like that throughout the year, but this was just kind of, I guess, a little bit bizarre because I think at the time our starting rate was like $350. Yeah. She wanted me to go down to like $200. I'm like, I can't do that. I said, if you want a pre-inspection, we could talk. But and that's something. And kind of just talking about pre-inspections, that's something. Overall, I would say for almost 2 years now, we had to kind of create as an alternative, just because how competitive the market is. Everybody has been somewhat denied a house for a while. They were like, man, I'm tired of my offers not getting accepted. What can I do? Waive an inspection, right? Yeah. Do you see pre-inspections being like a huge alternative in your area, or the competitive level a little more balanced in Manistee?
It's a lot more balanced where I'm at. There's definitely a lot less competition for me.
Yes, sir.
A lot of my, there is one other local guy, but most of my competition actually comes out of Traverse City. There's a pretty big outfit there. They've got like 10 or 15 inspectors, so they'll come and poach some of my area a little bit. I'll go up into theirs, no problem too. So so I've got to deal with that a little bit, but my biggest thing in terms of a pre-inspection is I'm trying to get the sellers to have me come in and inspect their house for them. Yeah. So that way they can do a lot. Like they can take this report. They can most buyers probably wouldn't want to see that report because they'd be like, well, it's biased. Yeah. But
it might not be though.
It won't be if it comes from me. I know that. And it gives the seller a chance to, if you fix a few things, well, then you're just taking negotiations off of the table for the buyer, so that when they come in and they get there and they're at that time wasting their money doing an inspection because I was already there. I told you all this stuff that you should fix, and you if you fixed it, well, then now the buyer just went and spent a bunch of money on a home inspection that they didn't have to, which is good because now they know what they're getting, and the inspector's going to be like, well, it looks like a bunch of stuff got fixed. I mean, that would be way better if the sellers would just take care of this ahead of time and know what they got and know what they're selling and have an opportunity to fix that, so that it helps them in the long run.
It's a pretty big act of transparency too as a seller, because I see that from both sides. A lot of times I hear said it's best sometimes not to know, right? They'll say kind of an under the rug sense, like it's best to keep it under the rug because what you don't know, you don't have to disclose. And that's a terrible thing. I hate even saying that, because of the implications of that. But it is true as a seller. Once you know something and it can be proven that you know that thing in some sense, maybe you got mold in the attic, you knew that, but you didn't put it on the disclosure, that's a huge deal. So doing that ahead of time is quite an act of transparency, because you're opening yourself up to the seller as, all right, tell me everything that's wrong, you know. And now there's even a paper trail, and I knew that, and now I can put it out and say, this is everything. You know, I had an inspection done. Everything I know is wrong is right here. So that's a little bit of covering my own ass as a seller, and also being kind of honest and saying, here you go.
And if you put that in the seller's disclosure, and then you still get a buyer, and then the buyer wants to walk because of what you've already disclosed, well, that's not something that they can really do, and you know, effectively at this point, because you knew there was mold in the attic.
Right.
You knew it was a Federal Pacific electrical service panel. And yet you still you put an offer in on the house. So, you know, fix it.
Definitely.
Just take care of it yourself, man.
Or if you're walking, you're probably going to have a hard time getting that deposit back, sort of thing. Because you should have known, babe. You signed the disclosure and everything else.
You were told that you know all this stuff. And now you want to leave?
Right.
What are you doing?
Right. Yeah. It's an interesting strategy, but we were kind of talking about it last year too, because we did see it happening more, I think, in Grand Rapids. There was an inspection company, I think, that was kind of leading the charge out there, and in doing those, what they're calling the seller pre-inspections, basically, you know, which was everybody's kind of looking at going, wow, I wonder how this is going to work, because it's, you know, it's just people are kind of 50-50 on it. Some people you'll hear say, I would never tell my seller to do that because they don't want to open them up to that liability and knowing. Some people go, it might not be a bad idea, you know. I kind of lean towards it might not be a bad idea, but there is definitely that, you know, I guess it seems kind of slimy not to do it on the whole notion of, well, we might find something we don't like. It's like, well, somebody's going to find something they don't like, possibly. So is it really is it really doing anything but moving the problem, or just it's never a good way to handle things that way.
I think when you have an agent that wants to actually help their client, you know, then they're just going to have to work a little bit harder, which sucks. Nobody wants to work. I don't want to work at all, let alone hard. But you know, here I am working every day.
Exactly.
And you know, I just prefer to have the knowledge ahead of time of what's up, you know, and whether I'm selling or buying, and you know, and it's just, I get it that it's hard for a lot of realtors and for a lot of agents, you know, they're doing the same thing we're doing. They just want to make that buck.
True.
And it's a sales position, so it's a little bit different because we're the anti-sales people. We walk in,
in some sense,
you know, you get some of these realtors that really get upset because I'm not in there telling them how nice everything is. Well, that's not what I'm getting paid for. I'm not here to sell it. I'm here to tell you what's wrong.
Right.
You know.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's crazy, man, how seller agents can do that, or even how some buyer agents may not want you to be as honest. Not, you know, like I said, you want to lay out all the facts. You know, me or you are not that type of inspector. Say, oh, you should not buy this house. This is a piece of crap. Not coming, you know what I'm saying, from that perspective. But like you said, being honest, throwing out everything that you're able to see and detect, man, and tell them the level of severity of those issues and everything like that.
And just because it's a major concern doesn't mean that you can't fix it. I mean, put in almost anybody can put in smoke alarms. I mean, you know, there's some simple stuff that
and it's all relative. It kind of comes back still to that whole thing. You just can't really assume anybody's situation. You know, somebody might be buying an inexpensive house full well expecting to put money into it. So, you know, you might tell them, hey, this furnace is going to be, you know, I'm thinking done by next year, to be honest with you. And they go, okay, you know, we got the money in the bank. That's no problem, you know. But the realtor hears that first and goes, oh, man, well, be careful how you tell them that. It's like, who do you think you are exactly? You don't, you know, that's not a decision for you or me or anyone to make. That's a decision for them to make. And you can't really, you know, and we'll find the opposite to be true. Sometimes you tell somebody something that in hindsight seems like such a small thing, and they're walking on it. They're like, no, I'm not interested.
Open
and you
ground outlet, crack the window,
and you just never know. But it's not up to us to steer those kind of, you know, as inspectors or realtors or anything. It's not up to us to steer those people in a certain direction. I think it can happen pretty easily, you know, in a lot of circumstances. I've heard realtors, I've seen them do it, you know, in situations we've been in or whatever. And I don't think that everybody necessarily has malintent in mind. But they just kind of, you know, it's easy to kind of think, wow, this isn't going to be a big deal, and I'm just going to try to control the situation, and we'll just keep everything kind of dead. It's not a big deal, but, you know, you can create some real problems that way.
Well, when it comes to being a realtor, I mean, what do you get? You get like 3.5%.
Yeah,
a lot of them, if that, because a lot of them have to give at least 1% of that to the brokers. So now you're making 1.5% to 2%. And, luckily, hardly anything's under $200,000 now,
Yep.
so that helps out a lot. But
average,
10 years ago, when you could easily buy a house for $70,000, that 3%? That's not very friggin' much,
Mm-hmm.
So
Very true.
so you got to keep moving, and if you've already shown this person 50 houses. And you finally got them into one, and then oh shit, they want an inspection, and then the inspection starts going south, and then they're like,
I don't want to do this another 50 times, They
just want to sell a house and then get another client. That's really what the goal is, and it's totally understandable.
It is.
It's hard to be it's really hard to be a realtor too.
It is tough.
So.
Yeah, it feels bad, especially I think it's easy to look at it and go, but it is easy to really understand where that can kind of come from, and it's just important to know that it can exist and to be able to kind of expect that that's going to come sometimes, and then if you can just kind of handle it in a way is like, look, it would be best if we just don't try to control this situation and that just let it happen, because I find usually when that kind of stuff happens, it always works out the best possible way. I don't know how that is or why that is, but when sometimes those deals fall through, it seems like the worst thing in the world, but somehow it almost always seems like the house they wind up with was better than the one that they walked out on, or better than the one that fell through. It just is. I don't think I've ever seen a situation where someone was like settling for the one that they ended up with and just forever wish they'd had the one that fell through. I've never heard of that happening. Right. I've never heard of that happening. So at the time, it just seems like such a different thing than it does once it's all said and done and everything works out. It's just best to not even, just to be honest, talk about what you see, leave it at that.
That's it. That's all we do.
Just leave it at that.
We do, man.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I know you just kind of lay this question out on the table, and all of our industries, like I said, I know we're, in the same industry there with home inspections, but what do you guys, if you could change one thing in you guys' industries, what do you think it would be?
That's a good, I'll say for me, kind of tapping into what I was saying earlier, I would say communication and transparency, because what I find very often is that I find that the troubles that I have communicating with people are because they've already been confused by people in the past. And so now I'm kind of unwinding a lot of these and kind of pulling things out from under the rug, right, that had been swept under. Again, with this client that I have right now, she had a real estate website through homes.com, which is they do fine work. They're fine. I got nothing really bad to say about them. It's not my preference. It's kind of templated sort of thing. I like to do things a little different, but they're fine at what they do. But she was having some issues with them. I think they went through a buyout. Somebody else had bought them. So you know how that kind of thing can make some things a little difficult. So she was looking to move away from this. And what she had there was kind of this is very common with those sorts of systems, like pay a flat fee and that's just it. And so that's convenient. She's able to pay something like, she said it was like $400 a month, which to me, I'm going, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money for an average website, but what they're doing is they're bundling up the service where you pull it from the MLS. They're bundling up a data exchange where they're able to get home values. They're bundling up all these services under that flat rate, and they're kind of giving you the perception that that's just something that you should expect, I guess, going forward. They're not really breaking that down, telling you what it is. We do that with Chandler Inspections. Like every price that you charge somebody before the inspection even happens, they know everything. And I think that that's essential, because then even if they don't like it, at least they're informed. They can take it somewhere else and say, well, what about this, 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 and this? They might even come back and say, you know what? I found that I didn't really like your prices because they seemed like so much, but then I went to the other place and they just kind of told me this crazy, bundled price and then added on a whole bunch of things. They kind of find out the hard way, and I find that a lot in my business and the web business and stuff. That is just it's a very common thing. And then I'm always working to kind of unwind and explain why I'm not the bad guy right now, but they were just bundling that all together, but we got to piece it together individually, because I don't want you to overpay for all that stuff, So that's a difficult thing. So I would say communication and just transparency in general in my business would be great if everybody could get on the same page on that one. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, in the home inspection business, I'm kind of trying to think about that right now, and everything that I would have to change would it's all because of me, because you know, I'm a little bit older. I'm not nearly as tech savvy as you guys. You guys are young and you got your shit together and you're just banging it out with your drones and your friggin' cameras on your phones and all this. You know, I still got this little camera that.
Do you have
know, oh yeah, man. I still,
yeah.
So my stuff, all my stuff is a little bit antiquated, but it's effective. It just takes me longer to do my job.
Yes,
sure.
But then it also gives me that opportunity to make sure it's kind of twofold, because the other side of that is that everything is highly customizable, and everything that I say, it just, you know, it comes out of my brain. I'm not just, you know, doing a drop down, clicking on that and calling it good. You know, like I can go into deep explanation. If somebody really wants to know something, I can bring that all to their attention. But it would be a heck of a lot easier if at the end of the inspection I was pretty much done.
For sure.
And didn't have to take all that work home with me and then put in another hour or two of editing while I'm trying to, you know,
dumping the pictures on everything.
Enjoy my day, have a drink, smoke a doob, and so I just want to make sure everything is nice and tight that way. And there's so much technology out there. I mean, besides the drones, the infrared, I mean, there's so many things that I could do. It's almost overwhelming. It's almost like there's too many things out there that you could just be dabbling in and playing with all the time. And I don't, you know, some of that would be helpful, I'm pretty sure. But you know, I'm just getting old, and I just don't want to change that much anymore, which really is sad, because it should be.
Well, you know, if it works for you,
it works.
It's not really. I don't think that in any way it would really be affecting your ability to do a thorough, quality job. You know,
right?
I think you're doing just as good a job as anyone that is using their phone, or you know what I mean.
And I'm not knocking that by any means. It's just you know, by doing it that way. It's, you know, and I'm lucky that I came into it when I did, because when you guys were babies, people they didn't use cameras. They would go through, they had a triplicate form, so you know, so it was all imprinted, everything was handwritten, and then they would go through and tick, and when they got done, they would like rip out part of it, and here you go. You didn't get a picture, you didn't know anything, just all you got were these
those were
check
hard
marks.
to read.
Especially some Goombaya that doesn't know, you know, doesn't have good penmanship. I mean, that would have been critical back then. Now you just got to be able to type halfway proficiently. I mean, we don't even need to know how to spell anymore. The computer takes care of that for us.
Very true. Yeah.
If I were to change anything, this is something. So, like you said, you've been running your business for 15, you know, plus years. You said 80% of your business is not based on just realtors, but a lot of people in the community who have used you. You know, them referring you to family members, friends, and different things like that. Something that me and Korbin was discussing at the beginning of this year is really trying to, overall, and this, like I said, in Grand Rapids, market is a little bit more challenging because you have more realtors. But trying to get to the home buyer before they even start the home buying look process to a certain extent, to where when they know, hey, I need a home inspection, I know exactly who I'm going to call. Not just based on a referral or you know, a realtor or anything like that, but based on branding, based on I'm familiar with what they do. Kind of like Nike to a certain extent, right?
Right.
You think about all of these shoes, but like I said, at the end of the day, they may go choose Nike because they're more aware of them. And kind of be able to do that to a certain extent in the home inspection space, which I feel like is a challenge to a certain extent, because as inspectors, we have to build these solid relationships and connect with realtors, because they are the people who are meeting the clients first. But if we can kind of get that head step, just because I feel like even with some of the realtors we connected with now who kind of refer us, a lot of them liked us because they clients brought us to them. They were like, oh, we like the way you work, you know, kind of, because at first if you meet a realtor, they'd be like, well, you know, you can show me all of this stuff, but I don't know how you work. And they kind of have to eventually try to take that chance to see how you work and build that trust with you, compared to if you and that client, they already trust you. They like the feedback, they like the reviews and the branding, and now you able to automatically, you know, kind of win over that realtor because they kind of see the great work that you do.
Well, you hit on two real important parts. You know, if somebody likes you and they trust you,
it's key. Yeah.
That's key, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's key. You just
That's
gotta.
what we learned yesterday.
That's where you need to be. Yeah. You know, and it's not. I mean, you guys are both very likable, so that's not the problem. It's just, but earning anybody's trust, you know, that's not always easy. And but once you do, and you continue to be just constant and steady, and you don't change. You know, you're the same person all the time. They know you, they like you, they trust you.
Consistent. Yeah. That's a tough one, I think, in too, because realtors, I mean, let's be honest, most realtors are salespeople, and everything about sales for the most part is image. And as a salesperson, when you're trying to maintain a certain image, it's basically like trying to maintain a brand. And so when you have to have a team of people around you, like inspectors or appraisers, all these different people, you kind of want them to be, you want to know that you can send them off to be by themselves and possibly run into your clients or whomever else, and you don't have to worry about them. Just like any other business, you want to have people you don't have to worry about. So that's a big thing, you know, to be aware of that, to know that those people that you're servicing, that's kind of what they're looking for, is just to know that they can trust you when you're with their clients, because we've all met people, I'm sure, that you wouldn't trust. You wouldn't trust in a room with with the people you care about, without a little supervision. You know, like that's a tough thing to find. And you know, it was funny. I was telling him earlier, just before we started, you know, how we met, and we met very, very shortly after I got licensed, and you were coming to me from, you know, as I was realtor, you were the inspector, saying this is what I'm doing. And nobody had come to me yet, and so, you know, just based on our initial meeting, I'm like, this seems like the kind of guy that I feel I could trust around my people. And you never let me down, you know. And everybody says, you know, great job, you know, awesome feedback every time, all the time, to the point now where if anybody even ever said that, I'd go, there's probably something wrong with you for not liking Brian. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't want to make any assumptions here, but nobody's ever said that.
I gotta go back to our very first conversation too, man. Like he calls me up, you know, we start talking. He's like, man, ain't nobody down here. Nobody wants to help me. This, that. He's like, I'm just trying to break into this business. It's something I want to do. And just talking to you, like, I could feel the passion, and I could just tell, like,
serious,
this guy's not fucking around. He really wants to do this. This is something that he wants to do. And then, you know, I meet you, and like, you know, you got to be in at least mild halfway good condition to do this job. Your client, you know, so I see that. I mean, good-looking guy, got his shit together, and just wants to learn, and just a freaking sponge of knowledge, you know, 100%. And wants to know this stuff. 100%. So it's like,
and that's rare, man. It seems rare to find somebody like that.
Because I've trained a couple other guys, but like it didn't take long, and I was just like, you know,
what am I doing?
What am I doing? And you know, most of the time I'm charging people. You want to ride along? It's gonna be at least $100 for you to have me teach you how to do this. But
it's just a distraction. Otherwise,
this kid comes up to my house and drives all the way up from Grand Rapids, and I'm like, all right, first home inspection of your life is gonna be my house.
Let's go.
And you know what they say? You know what they say about carpenters, and like their house is always the last one to get finished. Well, I still got knob and tube wiring. I still got all this shit. Lack of smoke alarms, hardly any receptacles. I got an old ass house, man.
That's too funny.
So Brian had a field day. I'm like, see that? No, that's not good, man.
That's way out of code. Code's a bad word in this house. We're not gonna say code.
Well, the funny thing is, like, you find all this stuff, you know, and things that we would write up and tell people to fix, but a lot of times, a lot of this stuff is also very livable. You can still live with it, you know. Do I make these recommendations? Yeah. Do I always follow my own recommendations? No.
A lot of the stuff I feel like we write up or that you tell people is just stuff that you could do. It's not stuff that you need to do. It's stuff that you could do, stuff that you should know that you can do. It's stuff that you should know to set money aside for, depending on how long you're going to live here, sort of thing.
Or at least you know you got a hazard.
Yeah,
you know?
Right. It's up to you, though. The big stuff you should know, hey, like your water heater is 20 years old, you know, you might want to set aside some money. It's gonna one day it's going to go out, and if you don't have the money for it, you're going to be upset. You know? So it's just little stuff like that, but all the other stuff, it's like, you know, make a checklist, get around to it if you want, when you can.
And when you can afford to. That's one of my biggest things, you know. You want, all your windows suck, but, you know, they work. And when when it's time, you know, and you get sick of looking at the damaged vapor seal and you can't see the lake through the window anymore, then
change it.
Then change it. Yeah, when
maybe
you can.
You want to look it up on YouTube and do it yourself.
Yeah,
I'm not the one to tell you, but now you know you might need to. You know,
I always try to be really cool and really chill. You know, and unless I get zapped on site, or something hits me in the head, I'm always really cool. You know?
Yeah. I used to, for a very short time, I was installing radon excavation systems. This was probably 10 years ago or something like that, if I had to guess, and maybe even more. And I remember getting zapped doing that a couple times because we were not electricians at all. I don't know the first thing about running wires or anything, but we had to very often hook up a those systems are real simple. A lot of times there's a hole in the ground, whether that's something we drill in the concrete or they have a sump pump that you can tap in, something deep where you can pull the radon out, and there's a fan that will be in line, and that fan's usually got to get installed either in an attic or in based off around a garage. It's got to tap into something, so a lot of times we would just end up tapping it in somewhere, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I watched a couple times someone else go to cut some wires, and bop, I'm thinking that is not for me, man.
I was in a house in Grand Rapids one time, man, and I was in the basement, and I see this water line, and I don't know what compelled me to touch it. I really don't, but I was like, something's up right here, and then I touched the pipe. It's a water pipe, and I get zapped.
No way!
I'm like, something's
wrong here. Yeah,
and I was a little mad too. I was like, well, again, I'm an old guy. Sometimes weird shit happens, so I did grab it again. I'm like, no, I'm getting zapped right now. Like, this ain't good. You need an electrician, bud.
I don't know what's going on here, but this is wrong. Yeah, that could be an emergency. I'm not sure.
I like to touch back on that piece as you said earlier. You said when we connected, you kind of felt the passion to a certain extent. And this is something I think that we can all touch upon, base upon. I can say that I somewhat love what I do. I don't mind waking up every morning, being a home inspector, grinding, building this business out of different things like that. I know for myself, I don't see myself really doing much other than what I'm doing now. Mm-hmm. When I say that, I just don't mean as a home inspector, but just as a business owner, entrepreneur, being able to illustrate my ideas, brainstorm, and kind of bring things to light. Do you guys feel like what you're doing is your fulfillment or is your passion or your purpose? And if not, do you think you can see yourselves doing anything else than what you're doing now?
Man, when I got into doing this, I'd already been a contractor and had flipped a couple houses, built a couple houses, and I like physical type of stuff. I grew up doing physical labor. I grew up as an athlete and lots of sports. So moving my body, keeping things strong and healthy is always nice. So what I learned doing all this construction stuff is that it's hard on your body, and you lifting up beams or trusses or if you're laying tile, you're bent over on your knees all day. That's hard work. And you don't always get paid. All your subcontractors get paid. Everybody gets paid. Mm-hmm. Everything gets installed. And then I finally get paid.
If there's anything left. Yeah.
And sometimes you get a fight, and usually you end up in some kind of dispute over some dumb thing because they wanted extra this, extra that, but they don't want to pay for it. Yeah, right? So whatever. Right. So I fell into this because one of the houses, one of the first houses that I flipped, actually, I had a home inspection done on it just to make sure that everything was going to be dandy. And I'm like watching this guy, and I'm like, this looks like a good gig. And then at the end, here I am.
Yeah.
Thinking about, and then I get my report. Yeah, and I'm thinking, I'm like, that's an easy $100 an hour or so. And then, over time, I just kept thinking about that. And then finally I was like, let's just go for it. And, and it was something that I did all on my own with nobody else helping me. Nobody showed me how to do this or that, I was fortunate to get in with a few people that were able to help me get a little bit, with the inspection reporting and things of that nature. So yeah, I think that this is something that I was meant to do. I'm not going to become any kind of billionaire doing it, but that's not exactly what it's about. I'm going to have a good life, and it's something that I'm going to be able to do for a long time. And a couple other things that, there's just other great perks about this job. It's not like I'm going into a shop and I'm pushing a part in, pulling something down, and then picking it back up, pulling the part out, dumping the shit, and then process, repeat all day.
I couldn't do it for a week, man. I could not do that.
I can't do that. I'm not good at having bosses. I don't like people telling me what to do. I want to be I'm the guy. I'm the guy.
It's three of those guys at this table, right?
Yeah, it's me, man. And so I get to do all that. And if I want to take time off, I don't have to ask anybody.
Amen.
If I want to do something, if I only want to do one job in a day, then I'm fine. And every day, it's something new. It's a new house. It's a new person I'm meeting. It's a new place that I've been to. Occasionally I'll go back to a house I've already inspected, but it's new. It's different. And everything is different every day. The people are different. The houses are different. And I love the diversity of my work because it's just not the same old shit day in and day out. It's one of the great parts about it. So yeah, I think that this is something that I'm going to do until I retire.
Amen.
How about for yourself, Korbin?
I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I don't know. I've always kind of felt this draw to do my own thing, and I think that part of doing my own thing has been doing my own thing in terms of my own business. I've liked, I worked, short background for me, I'm 30 now, I did a good 12 years or so of retail, food service, rent, just all sorts of odds and ends. I've done a lot of different jobs, tried a lot of different things, and there was a pattern. Usually a year or two was the most I would make it anywhere before I'd get tired of something, or I just felt like I'd taken everything I could from that specific, position, everything I could learn, and saw that there wasn't any real growth potential or anything more to really take from it, and so would kind of move on to something else. And so I definitely like where I'm at now, where, like a lot of things you said, like I do kind of set my own schedule. I have to be a little responsive, and my day isn't always exactly my own as I'd like it to be, but I do have definitely the flexibility that I never would have had with somebody else in charge of my schedule or anything like that, and I can be much more efficient. I can do much more in 5 hours of controlled me time than I can with somebody else telling me what to do for 8 hours, sort of thing. There's just, I could do that. That was always a problem for me, was efficiency with other people. But I don't necessarily know that I feel like what I'm doing right now, the main thing being like building websites and things like that. There's parts of it I enjoy. There's parts of it I don't, and I don't know that I can see doing it for the rest of my life. And the other problem that I've kind of I've had that I've been thinking about is I don't necessarily know if having people work for me is something that I'm even that interested in too, which is kind of it's an important thing for me to figure out, because just to an extent, because to grow a business past a certain point, you got to have some level of that. You do have to have some level of that one way or another. So I've been struggling with that a little bit. I'm happy with where I'm at right now, but I wouldn't say that I'm complacent necessarily, which is always a good thing. You should always kind of want to grow, but I'm not 100% sure. We've been talking about some other things, other business ideas and things like that as we've kind of been growing the things that we do have. And one thing that I kind of want to just, I've always been kind of drawn towards, I create a lot of content for businesses and our businesses and things like that. I want to keep doing that, and I can see part of me kind of being in charge of having people help me to do that as well. Maybe having that be a business that I kind of maintain. But I think long term, I really want to use those talents and those abilities to do things that I want to do, to be honest with you, because I always kind of feel that creative draw towards things. I do, music and have the camera for photography and all these things. I find a lot of times that I'm not using them for myself. And that's really where that draw is to kind of create things for myself. And then there's a balance of, when you're getting good at those sorts of things, sometimes you don't always want to put everything out in the world. That's a whole nother struggle as an artist or a creator or whatever. And so that's kind of what I've been thinking this year. Kind of my goal is to get over a little bit of that, to kind of do what I need to do for business, but then kind of try to set aside some time to do things that I just want to do that maybe aren't going to pay me today or tomorrow or next week or next month. But maybe they will in 6 months, maybe they will in a year, maybe they will in 2 years. you never know. I don't know. I think in some sense, for somebody like me to put that kind of stuff out there into the world is a way of networking, is a way of reaching people that is a little bit different. But I think that the people I need to reach, I can reach that way, you know. But I'll never really know if I don't ever really try that. And all I ever do is just kind of keep it in house for businesses and things like that, and using it to kind of grow other people's businesses, which has been a great thing. But I really I owe it to myself to kind of see what I could do for myself, by myself, in that sense, with some of that stuff. So happy with where I'm at, but that's kind of my goal for this year is to set aside some of that time for that sort of thing.
Yes, sir.
Definitely.
I think the best thing I kind of picked up from what you said is that awareness piece, and kind of like, you know, you owe yourself that, you want that self-preservation, and just being able to continue, you know, working and creating those goals and different things like that until you receive that self-preservation that you feel like you deserve. We'll kind of go into like a little different portion of the show, more so now, just kind of talking about overall the under the rug moment. Like I said, in Michigan right now, it's kind of the renting season. So, you know, right now as inspectors, it's kind of hard or a challenge to kind of inspect roofs. If you got 3 inches of snow on your roof and different things like that, and as inspectors, we have to tell clients that in the most professional way. Like, hey, you know, we're here to do it, but, you know, right now it's kind of limited access area, kind of based on the weather conditions and different things like that. So somewhat on the rug moment, we're going to kind of talk about roofs and kind of talk about what kind of gets under roofs to a certain extent, kind of far as like roof sheeting and different things like that. I know, and you kind of seen so far, you know, like I said, Korbin comes on our inspections for photography and different things like that. And he kind of get to see the crazy things I'm able to find and point out to clients.
You chase them up in the attics, don't you?
I do sometimes.
I've seen a couple pictures.
Yeah. Somebody took that. Yeah, that was me. Yeah, not all of them. I don't know how he gets in some of them, man. I'm like, especially being that tall, I'm like, man, I don't know how that. Maybe that's the only way you can get in some of them.
And twist, man. With some of them.
Sometimes it's harder to get out than it is to get in.
Agreed, man.
Yeah.
So, kind of going back to the roof sheeting piece, what do you think is the main, or what would you suggest to a client when they got a roof and they don't get like a complete roof tear off? You kind of get what I mean with the roof sheeting, especially like a newer house. So let's say a house that was built in the 90s, right? The shingles is 25 years old. The roof is pretty much done, but the wood still looks okay. Yeah. But then the shingles, you know, you get a new roof now 15 years later, your shingles are only 10 years old or 15 years old, but now the wood underneath of it isn't in the best condition. A lot of water damage, potential leaks and different things like that. So what do you think you recommend to clients with roofs who don't or didn't have a complete tear off due to the seller not getting that productive?
Well, most of the time, you know, if I'm writing something up, if I see that there's like 2 layers on a roof, you know, like oftentimes I will find some water damage in an attic, but a lot of times that damage, as far as I know, it happened on the previous roof. That's why they've got this new set of shingles on. So I always recommend a complete tear off of all the shingles.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, that's just the beginning. You know, once they've had a chance to establish and take a look at the wood, I mean, the wood really shouldn't be rotted or anything as long as, but there's factors that are involved in that. Yes, and one of the biggest things is a flashing, you know, it's huge around chimneys or plumbing vents, skylights, you know, anything that, anything that protrudes through a roof is something that needs to be protected, you know, so those are a couple important things, but even more importantly, you know, as I look out on this nice snowy day and I see some of these houses, you know, I see one over there and I'm doing some inspecting right now. So like all these roofs, it's great when you see all this snow on a roof. Yeah. Because that tells you a lot about the roof. It tells you that although you can't necessarily see the shingles, it tells you that it's vented right, so there's enough air getting in and it's insulated properly. So you're not getting a bunch of heat transferring all the way through to the sheeting that's causing ice dams and all these other things. So you want to see a bunch of snow with no ice, little to no icicles. I mean, sometimes you can't help it. But when I show up at a house and all the other houses in the neighborhood got snow on them and yours ain't got no snow on it, well, that tells me that there's some kind of a problem.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Agreed.
You know, so usually it's a venting and an insulation issue. And, you know, you get in there and when you do get in there, if you start seeing some water damage and stuff, well, oftentimes, again, it's a flashing issue or the shingles are that shot, you know. So that's a hard part about wintertime looking at a roof is that you don't always know, but there are some things that happen in the winter, like this heat transfer that I'm talking about, that you just can't necessarily see by looking at the house from the outside on a nice sunny day. In the summer or whatever.
Very true.
So yeah, when it comes to roofs, I mean, the flashing and ventilation are of the utmost importance. Almost anybody can lay shingles. It's not that hard, you know. It's the flashing and stuff, you know. And
I feel like you know, of all the inspections that I've been on with you and that we've gotten to take a look at that, I think 9 out of 10 houses haven't done it right. I mean, some of them are old, and some of them, you know, there's different reasons.
The older they are, the worse off they are.
Yeah, there's different reasons for sure why that is, but it's astounding. I mean, it seems really rare that we actually come across a roof and an attic and everything that's in good condition. That's you just look at and go, yeah, this is everything. It checks all the boxes. Everything is done right. You know, it's very rare, and I think that's a tough one because how often do homeowners even know? They don't ever put their head in the attic. They don't know what's supposed to go into a new roof. They don't know even, you know, the best thing. You're kind of vulnerable a lot of times as a homeowner in that position because you gotta trust. You can get as many quotes as you want, talk to as many people as you want. At the end of the day, you assume if they're, you know, banging and tearing up your roof, they're doing a good job, and that's not always the case.
Not always the case, man.
They're not always looking. Yeah, and so that's a scary thing even as a prospective homeowner to know that that's a possibility. That's a scary thing. That's a bummer. It's one of those things where it's just like you can't really. You kind of got to put your faith in somebody, and then you got to have some way to kind of like make sure that you know what they're doing is what they say they're doing. I guess the moral of the story is know an inspector, because you can have on speed dial say, "Are they doing this right?" Because I'm not sure. I don't know. You know, it probably would be where you're spending $10,000-$15,000 to get a roof done. It might be worth paying $150 to have an give a second opinion and just say, "Hey, like does this look right to you? Are they doing a good job so far?" You know, because that'll pale in comparison to what the whole roof's going to cost. And if they're not doing it right, better to catch it early than late. That's for sure.
I was involved last year with a guy up north. Jesus, his house was huge, big old house, and he wanted to get it re-roofed. So he hired this guy to get it re-roofed, and this guy hired somebody else, and it was the worst damn roof I've ever seen, man. I mean, so it took a minute to get up there because, again, a big house, but you start crawling up there, and the shingles are like on an angle. There were spots where you could tell that they had taken shingles off, but not all of them, because then they just covered over other shingles.
Wow.
I mean, total mess. Total mess. And that's what the guy called me about, because he's like, man, something just don't look right. Can you come and take a look at it? It's a little old guy. He's like 80. He ain't getting up on no roof, and he's got this giant mansion. I'm surprised, you know, to see all this stuff. And I show up and I start looking around. I'm like, holy cow. So then it ends up in court, and it's like, you know, talking to the defense side attorney, and he's like, well, how do you know? I'm like, I mean, realistically, man, anybody, And he's like, well, the first thing he asked me is, how many home inspections have you done? I would say, it's at least 5,000. Well, how many roofs have you seen? I go, probably 15,000.
Right.
He's like, well, that doesn't add up. I go, well, you know, you might have an outbuilding. Sometimes I go to a place, they got 9 outbuildings. I got to look at all their roofs and see tons of roofs. And like, even without, that could have been the first roof I ever inspected. I would have been like, this ain't right. This is not good.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
Anybody could have seen that, you know?
Yeah.
And the poor dude that did it, like, he just ended up, he hired some schmuck that just didn't do it right. And unfortunately for him, he's the guy that ended up on the hook. Wow. You know,
so did a roofer pay a roofer to do a roof? Was that the situation? Like he paid somebody that was
I think a roofer company? Paid a local drug addict too.
That sounds more like
something like that.
Yeah, that would make a lot more sense.
Holy shit.
That sounds a lot more, appropriate.
That's funny shit right there.
That's so sad, man. See, that's exactly it, though. That poor old man, and good that he kind of looked and thought, something doesn't seem right here, but that's so sad. And then all this work has been done, all this money has been spent.
It's got to be redone.
Got to waste everybody's time.
Who's going to end up paying for it? Actually, probably the guy that owned the house is going to be the one that's going to end up paying for it, because you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip.
Yeah, exactly.
The roofer guy, poor guy, man. I kind of felt bad for him because, he effed it up pretty bad, but he's also not going to be able to afford to pay for this to get fixed.
Right,
so,
right. And everybody's spending money in court, and that's not cheap at all. It's a damn shame. Yeah.
What do you think, Shawn, when it comes to older houses? Their framework is built different. They got more so like the slat framework boards. Sometimes I get into a lot of older houses. In those situations, you have like those large openings or gaps between those slat boards, and those houses may necessarily not have the roof sheeting that they should have at this point in time. What do you typically recommend in those areas?
It should be torn off. Not necessarily that bottom piece of sheeting. That doesn't always necessarily have to go, because that actually provides a little bit of stability.
Yes,
but
sir.
what that tells me, when you say something like that, it kind of indicates that the very first roof that was ever on that house was probably cedar shake.
Right.
So when they did that back in the day, they were able to afford to put these the roof sheeting boards on a wider gap, because they were just nailing 2 nails here, and then the shingles were long enough that they could go down to the next. So after that, then they probably put shingles over it, and then they put shingles over it again, and then they put shingles over it again. And then by the time it gets all ripped off, again, that tells me that whoever ripped all that stuff off and re-roofed it was not a good roofer, because they should have put the sheeting down, because you have to be able to nail your shingles into some wood. You can't just have open spots.
Yeah.
And for a lot of reasons, besides the shingles might come off, it's not safe for you. You go walking around up there, you might step in a hole.
Right.
Yeah. And then you're causing damage. I mean, it's not good or safe for anybody, for somebody to do some shoddy ass work like that.
That's for sure.
You need to be on your game and make sure, and who knows what the person that owned the house, maybe all they could afford were the shingles, and they're like, no, just do it anyway. And the roofer probably should have walked away from the job at that point. So we can't do it like that. Yeah. It has to be done properly.
Right.
You run into that stuff, man.
That's a tough one. Yeah, and everybody's trying to eat. Everybody's trying to put food on the table. Sometimes that happens too.
Yeah. So I kind of understand, but then it'll cost you in the end
Big time.
if that's what you do.
That's right.
And if somebody's wise enough to get a home inspection, and they got a good enough home inspector that's like, you're right.
Seen some roofs in my time. That ain't right. Exactly.
I know one, like the biggest things, is super minor, but one of the biggest and common things we most likely see with roofs is like missing chimney caps. And then you kind of get in the basement, you see how corroded and rusted the bottom of the chimney is, just because of all of the water and snow. And then the potential pests that can, kind of hide in those areas, bats and different things like that. And you typically see a lot of bats more so in Madison and North Michigan,
The bats are insane.
Really? We don't get that much.
It's crazy.
Not in Michigan. Not in West Michigan.
I really try to, if I have to get all the way into an attic, I will. But I really try to avoid that, especially where I live. Because
those bats.
Yeah.
I mean, picture this, okay? You've got these ceiling joists, and it's all covered in insulation. And sometimes you're, especially some big guy like you're huge, and you're up there and you're crawling around.
Yeah.
And if there's a bat or a raccoon, anything that's alive that could get into there that might want to live in there.
Yeah.
Not only could they hurt us or give us rabies or something, they got full access. I mean,
your mobility is limited.
Us humans, we can't run out of there. But a bat just all over the place. A raccoon, I mean, they're just running you down, and then you're trying to crawl out of this little tiny ass spot. That it ain't gonna fly, man.
Yeah, that's very true.
I've been attacked more than once by bats.
By bats.
Okay. Never by. I've seen, and more recently, this has been very strange. In the last couple of weeks, I've seen 2 houses that have had like big poop piles in their attic, and it was apparent that it was caused by a raccoon.
Oh, wow.
So you got a tree that grows right tight to the house. They climb right up that tree, and if they can find a way in, they'll get in. This one spot, they had their fascia was all the flashing and fascia was gone, and as soon as I get in there was shit literally everywhere, man. As soon as I poke my head in there, and so as soon as I see that. Well, then the flashlight's going, because I'm looking for eyeballs too, man. I'm like,
for sure.
And then I'm like, I ain't getting in there. I won't. There's no way. I'm crawling through that very far.
I typically knock. I try to make a loud noise on the access panel before to see if I can hear anything before or whatever. But yeah, I've been blessed not to, once again, I only been doing this for 3 years. You've been doing it for far longer. So I haven't been, I won't say blessed or whatever, but to be in a position to run into anything crazy.
Just a matter of time, bud.
Did you say you had one or not yet? So far?
I remember a squirrel. It ran right out the roof when it saw me. I do remember one specific time. It was a house in Kalamazoo. I got up there and I started hearing a lot of scratching. I didn't see anything. So when I heard that, I automatically got up. I'm like, it's probably a raccoon, some type of possum, something like that, or whatever. And then when I looked out, when I did the inspection outside, I see where some of the soffits and fascia was wide open, was exposed, and anything could get in there at that point. So, but yeah, that was a crazy story.
I like that when I'm pushing up that attic access hatch, and I get it up, and all of a sudden I hear.
Oh no!
And the catch just comes. I'm like, nope, something's in there. Not going in.
No, not at all. Limited access. Yeah, right. Moving on. No, sorry.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that gets crazy sometimes. Seeing that stuff.
That's crazy.
Yeah, this, like I said, us kind of. This being the second episode, I know typically we shoot at our office space that me and Korbin share in Rockford area, and being able to come up to Shelby now, doing the lake house, the Blue Water Lake House, and everything like that. Shout out to business partners Chris Mathis and Ray Jones and everything like that. It was our business partners to be able to for us to be able to purchase the Blue Water Lake House and everything like that.
Shout out.
It's beautiful. Great opportunity there, man. And like I said, I know typically at the beginning of our episodes we kind of start off with our goals and different things like that. So just kind of ending maybe some things that we want to achieve in the next month or so.
Next time,
So next time we all kind of come back together and everything, we can kind of go over those goals. So Korbin, you got any
goals between now and then? I got a few projects I'm working on that'll take me a good amount of time. I'm thankful for that. If I could be specific about one thing, I guess I would say I'm trying to do a better job, and I have been doing this the past couple times, just kind of practicing what I preach here and trying to really be very specific about my pricing when I quote out certain things. And really, because because like I said earlier, there's so many different variables. A lot of these different projects, what I found in the past couple of years is I end up doing a lot of free work, and most of that's because there's nothing really more embarrassing or unprofessional in my opinion than going back and saying, hey, remember when we talked about this? I forgot, like that's not a good look, in my opinion. That's like, you eat that if you didn't come up with it in the first place. So really doing a better job of, because we talked about this before. I've been kind of responsive, where I've been trying to get in a position of just kind of laying things out there a little bit better, knowing exactly what's going to go into those things, and then instead of kind of trying to compromise on things, just these are the things that need to get done, and if these are the things that we're not looking to pay for, then you're probably looking for somebody else to do a different job. It's as simple as that. So I think just continuing to try and kind of lay out my my strategy like that is something I'm going to be focusing on this next month. I got a couple things coming up, and then otherwise probably just kind of continuing to think on this. If I want to get somebody else involved, what that looks like, how that's going to go, sort of thing. So maybe I'll have something to report in by the next podcast.
How about for yourself, Shawn?
I got an immediate goal for February, and that's to get to Mexico for a couple of weeks.
We're going to hold you to that.
We're going to go down to Cancun for about half of February. I've pretty much resigned myself to the fact that Februarys are always a slow month. I might as well just get the hell out of this country for a minute.
It's gonna be okay.
Just go lay down and get rested up. Because once March hits, once I get back into town, I'm gonna go call up my realtors, let them know I'm not retired yet, and and start and get on them and tell them to start by show some houses, man. Get me give me some customers.
That's just as important of a goal, I think, to have that time, man. That's awesome. That sounds like a great vacation.
Well, we're lucky this year and that we're able to do it. We've with the COVID and all that's affected so much too, and just to be able to get the heck out of here for a minute and recoup and get ready for a hot and heavy year, because I know it's not going anywhere.
No, I don't think so. I
don't see prices going down yet, man.
I don't know. No, I don't think so. Buying power, we'll see. I don't know. That could be one thing, but it just doesn't. For all the mixed opinions we tend to hear on the state of the economy, state of this, state of that, seems to me like there's no shortage of people buying houses the past couple of years. So no matter what they say, prices keep going up. And
we still lack housing.
Yeah, competition is high. I saw something the other day that said something like we were going to be, I want to say 9,000 homes short or something. There's so much demand and people moving into this area, specifically Grand Rapids and West Michigan in general, that there's just they can kind of tell where the supply and demand is of that, and it is not even close to being able to meet the demand. There's so many new houses being built, new developments. It's still not enough. Apartments, still not enough. It's not enough. Not enough people want to sell. More people want to move here than want to leave here. So that's an issue. So people keep talking about market crashes, blah, 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 blah. I don't necessarily see any need for it. I do think if the market crashes, it's going to be a market crash that exceeds the real estate market. It would be something we'd be worried about more than the real estate market if that market were to crash. You know what I mean? So maybe, but I don't really think that's a very reliable for anybody looking. Thinking that you're going to get a deal anytime in the next few years. I don't think the stars.
You might get a little bit more of a deal on the house, but now if they go ahead and they raise interest rates, well then it's a wash,
right? Man. Exactly, because they're about as low as they're going to get forever still. So I would say to anybody that's looking to buy, both good luck and good luck. I don't know.
I got a quick funny story. This is a COVID story. So last year, I had 3 or 4 clients at least that they were coming up from Chicago or Detroit area, done with the city. They want to buy this house out in the middle of nowhere.
Oh yeah,
no problem. Let's go inspect your house. So already this year, I've had one guy. He was a Detroiter, and he calls me up and he's like ready to buy another house. So then, I kind of didn't quite remember, but then I put it all back together and I'm like, so yeah, didn't I, we did one last year for you and you were coming up from Detroit. You want to be out in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, what? I go, why are you moving back into town then? And he's like, I wasn't prepared for this shit. he's like, I gotta have some people. He's like, there's just way too much snow and there's nobody out here at all.
He didn't go so far he didn't have internet, did he? I know there's
no, they were out there. Yeah, they would have needed a dish or something for the internet.
No, that's too heavy,
so they were like,
that's too heavy. I can do all of it except for that.
It was a whole rude awakening for this cat.
Yeah, gotta get a little closer into the city there. Yeah, 100%.
That's funny.
That is funny.
Yeah, you run into those spaces like that in the country and everything, in rural areas. No? Yeah, I want to say I guess my biggest goal, like I said, me just kind of understanding now it's more my job is to try to delegate and to delegate on a high level. You got to continue trying to provide and create opportunities for others and different things like that. So I guess my biggest goal is to continue growing the business and trying to get Marcus to be full-time, getting him more inspections week by week. Because I remember last, when we had walked into the office, it was John and Evan, and it was just kind of going over the goals. That was my main thing is trying to do less inspections. When I say less, not the business, but just me specifically, and allowing Marcus and future inspectors to help me grow the business and take care of my clients. So continue putting that in play. And hopefully, like I said, I know February is typically a slow month for us as inspectors, but see how February goes and just kind of prepare ourselves for March and spring and summer months. So
yeah.
Well, you're on a great path, man.
I appreciate it.
You got all your stuff together. I know you're gonna kill it. You're gonna do great.
I'm hoping so, man. I just got accepted into that Spring GR 250 project. Like I said, it's kind of a overall goal of to help like minority businesses to continue to grow. So I'm looking forward to that. You have class every other Thursday for 3 hours. Like I said, just continue being transparent with your business and just kind of laying out everything, continue to build. So looking forward to that. And on the next podcast, Under the Rug, looking forward to being able to share that experience and everything like that. So, Shawn, we appreciate you coming up, man, and meeting us
first
here.
Guest.
And,
Thank you guys.
First guest,
appreciate it, as promised.
Yeah, I told you, man. I told Shawn, I said, man, me and Korbin is starting this Under the Rug podcast. I said, man, you got to be the first guest.
Nice.
You are the reason, a huge chunk of where I'm at now. I'm pretty sure at some point when I first started, I was going to be able to find a trainer. I don't know who they was, but I'm glad that I was able to find you.
And travel a little farther than you thought.
And really make that solid connection and everything, man. So I appreciate you and just all the memories we were able. All love, man. Love you too, bro. And just being able to create those professional and personable memories over the past few years. So Under the Rug, man. Episode 2 and all the wrap.
Cheers, bro.
Cheers, man.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Shawn.
Thank you. It was great meeting you.
You too, man.